Hello. This presentation is titled Digital Treasure Trove, Incorporating Online Surveys for Data Collection. In terms of its focus, you're going to look at two interrelated things, exploring methodological issues in using online questionnaires for educational research and suggesting best practices. The methodological issues and best practices I talk about are highlighted in the context of a pre-service teacher education study that combine both analog and digital questionnaires. Analog are offline paper-based questionnaires and digital are online questionnaires through a website. As a result, this study provides practical backdrop to theoretical concepts discussed. I'll get into more detail soon. The motivation for this presentation and this research is the idea of how easy it is to collect data online. I'm sure you're familiar with the idea with Google Forms and probably SurveyMonkey as well. They're online survey tools which allow the user to have decreased technical ability to build web surveys. It's not particularly hard to use once you have them. Lowered hosting costs for any data that's collected, as well as you can improve your data collection by giving you an array of different things. As a result, educational researchers or researchers in general can easily collect quantitative and qualitative information online, which is something we all want to have if we're doing research and collecting data. The context for this was a summative evaluation of a teacher training program. I surveyed pre-service teacher education candidates about the quality of their teacher training program. And if you're not familiar with these programs at the university level, this program I think it's pretty typical. The one I studied, it does a combination of university-based theoretical education as well as school-based practical teacher training. As a result, so it has these two types of components, and basically over the year you do a little bit of both. You get some university-based theoretical education, then you go to a school to try it out, go back to the university, and then you go back to the school, and it kind of iteratively goes back and forth. As you can probably tell by this presentation, it involves both offline and online questionnaires for this training program, and I'll give you the reasons for that. So in terms of the offline part, the analog paper-based first, the students who were learning to be teachers were geographically dispersed because they're in a teacher training program, so they couldn't all just do them, in one school. They had to go to different places, so they became geographically diverse because it's going to be complicated and difficult to find schools for everyone. As a result, because they were dispersed and it was difficult to get hold of them, I had to hand deliver questionnaires to these various student colleges that were part of a larger university. On a related note, in terms of the online digital questionnaire part of it, the online digital questionnaire followed the analog delivery. Again, the student geographical dispersion required and necessitated a digital version of the initial analog questionnaire to increase the chances of eliciting random and representative responses from all teacher trainees to make sure it's as high quality a survey and questionnaire and data and results as possible. Luckily, there are complementary nature of online and offline questionnaires. Research by various people who work in these types of fields, they show that the complementary forms of online and offline surveys can be collected and maintain data integrity, which is good. Both of these types of surveys are self-administered, so students or the research subjects can do the surveys on their own and self-administer. In terms of the online surveys, they are relatively cheap, which also makes them complementary if you need them. These multiple modes of data collection and mixed delivery methods increase participation more than either method alone. So if you're doing online, you can email the people who are your subjects, or you can also collect the data through things like mail. Similarly, when you're preceded by email notification, online questionnaires achieve similar response rates as mail questionnaires. So that's good that you can have similar response rates. And again, complementary, doing both, you can ideally get a little bit of both and get more data collected than you would otherwise. One of the big keys and focuses of this research was the idea of getting parity between the online and offline surveys. Again, I needed to combine both paper and online versions to increase the response rates of respondents. And I wanted to have the online questionnaire, as you'd imagine, look and behave like the offline paper version as much as possible. As a result, the online survey, in terms of its color scheme, the fonts used, and the user interface buttons, they match the original offline paper version as much as possible. And I'll get into what I mean by user interface buttons in a moment. But basically, I wanted them to be as close to one another as possible. In terms of the online questionnaire, it was designed based on the analog version. In terms of usability, the online digital respondents could omit answers and limit the information they provided for open-ended questions, similar to an offline paper version, where in those situations, you hand out the survey or questionnaire, you don't really know what someone's going to do. So I want to kind of give that freedom to the digital one as well, as opposed to having compulsory answers. And in terms of the design, I wanted the online format changed from its original to resemble the original offline questionnaire as much as possible for similar visual parents, so people would react to it differently, similarly. Coded a lot of HTML code, over 2,000 lines, and as you'd imagine, given that many lines of code, creating, modifying, and testing code, it took several weeks and was highly labor intensive. So just think of that if you want to do this. The testing online questionnaire, I was doing that to try to maximize usability. The survey was further tested before widespread dissemination by students who had already filled out the offline paper questionnaire, and feedback was elicited. They were students, but not in the same program as testing, so it was just like similar types of vibes of respondents. So if I'm going to test students, why not get not people from the specific population I'm looking for, but similar students at a similar institution. After the questionnaire, online questionnaire was completed, I inputted answers from paper questionnaires into online version to ensure the online version worked properly, to see that the results matched. And again, this is before I collected fully collected data. The respondents were invited to comment on their user experience to improve the questionnaire. So anything they said, I tried to make sense of it and improve the final digital questionnaire. As a result, the online user experience mimicked the offline, which is useful. In terms of follow-up in the online questionnaire, there's 3 main points. In terms of reliability, the coding included online and offline source names so they could be distinguished for reliability checks. So when I inputted them into the SPSS program, I could tell if I needed to go back whether they're online or offline. In terms of quality, both source types were created equally for processing and analysis. One wasn't biased in terms of being more valid or reliable than another. And finally, in terms of accuracy, after the data was inputted into SPSS, as many of you probably use, all the questionnaires were individually checked for accuracy by matching the answer from the source to minimize coding errors. So I wanted to ensure that as well. Obviously, you want to minimize coding errors as much as possible. There are 2 major sets of observations in terms of mixed mode data collection. From creating, programming, and disseminating online and offline surveys. First, multiple modes of data collection that increase overall participation rates. So as you imagine, by having multiple modes, you get more than if you used either one alone. And due to the busy student schedules, I received more responses by using both modes of questionnaire than either one alone. If I left it just to purely paper-based, that I just wouldn't have had as many. And B, in terms of email notifications, they help to increase student respondent participation rates for the online survey. And this, whether the response rates to mail-based questionnaires were similar was unconfirmed. It was difficult to compare that, but email notifications helped. C, mixed mode data collection yielded similar answers across mode, confirming rows. When I looked at reliability checks, they seemed very similar. D, in terms of quality of responses for open-ended questions between online and offline questionnaires, it revealed little difference, which is great. So they seemed the quality of responses were similar. And this effort, finally, E, this effort to achieve parity in user experience between on and offline questionnaires, in appearance and mode of interaction, likely aided in eliciting similar answer quality. Observation 2, in terms of programming, testing the questionnaire. In terms of equivalency, A, creating online and offline questionnaires and minimize user experiences differences between the 2 versions, so they're equivalent user responses. In terms of usability, respondents could omit answers and limit information for open-ended questions, similar to filling in paper versions and minimizing response differences. In terms of pro templates, they were not used because this limited pre-formulated questionnaire templates and pro online survey services. As a result, because they didn't provide customization, I had to go and make my own. D, design parity. Online user experience mimicked offline, so that's good. In terms of testing across hardware and software platforms, minimize potential user differences. F, in terms of testers, using respondents who filled out an analog version could be useful for testing the digital version so you can compare the two. In terms of input, G, inputting answers from one offline into online questionnaires is useful in testing. And then finally, H, you want to maintain a consistent policy for how you deal with things like missing data across online and offline surveys. Finally, conclusions. Low-cost, high-quality online questionnaires made them increasingly preferred way to collect data. Many issues when utilizing online data collection, especially if you're combining online and offline methods. So be careful for that. Finally, online surveys potentially enlarge study populations and help researchers derive more accurate information beyond their traditional offline surveys. That is Digital Treasure Trove, incorporating online surveys for data collection. Thanks for watching.